5.5 because your barrel's extending. It's a loss of light issue, so your aperture is changing. With flash, you can't do that because obviously if you've tested your flash at 4.0 and then all of a sudden you zoom in and you're at 5.6, you've lost the stop there. So keep that in mind. If you have a flash that is variable, this happens a lot to wedding shooters. They'll bring me their work and they'll say, I don't know what's wrong. I didn't even move and the lights won't work. And I see that a lot on the forum, in the old school forum. And my first question was, go look at your lens. And nobody catches that when they would say, oh, I had no idea that it opens up and stops down by itself. So just check your lenses because that can wreck your flash, especially if you're working in manual mode. You've metered, that was their biggest thing. I metered, I checked, I did everything you said to do, and one is bright and one is dark, and I don't get it. And it can be up to 2 stops difference, and that's a big deal. When you're in a dark wedding scenario already and you just lost 2 stops of light, you're really asking for it. So just check your lenses and make sure that you have the appropriate one. As far as lens choices, obviously there are a million out there. I tend to shoot with the telephoto lens. That's why that variable distance or the variable aperture is important, but obviously there are wide lenses and a standard lens. I tend to keep on me a standard and a telephoto at all times, a 50 and the 70 to 200, 2.8 at all times. That way I have that real true to life. A 50 is closest to what your eye sees peripherally, and then of course this telephoto is what we want to see. Wide angles, I don't use them a lot in portraiture, just some fun, silly stuff that we do every once in a while. All right, focusing on your camera, you have to learn your focal points and how they work. I am not gonna lie, I probably shot 10 years, probably not, maybe 6 years digital capture, and I didn't know that the little red button in the middle moved. So I was always like, focus and recompose, focus, and I would put it on the eyes and then recompose, which if you're taking your lens barrel and moving it that way, you're throwing it out of focus. So super frustrating, and it was kind of funny because I had this other shooter that worked for me, and one day I was in a panic attack because my little red dot was gone, and he turns to me, this is another one of those, I'm really good at playing like I know what I'm doing. I'm great at faking it till I make it. So he had moved the focal point. I literally did not know that that was an option. And so, and I've been a shooter for we're not talking days, we're talking years and years. But again, I was old school film previous to this. So the first few years in digital, I didn't know that. I'd never used single lens, a digital camera. And so he had moved the focal point, and I'm in a panic saying, I cannot get this thing to focus, something is wrong. And he's like, well, just move the focal point back. And he looks at me and goes, you knew that you could move that, right? And I'm like, yeah. Duh. I literally walked away going, oh my gosh, I feel so stupid. I mean, I just didn't know. And a lot of what I know is those really stupid, dumb moments. And you will never see me sweat. Well, today you might have, but when it comes to bad situations, we play that off so well. I just fake it. I'm like, absolutely, that's awesome. Yeah, I got that. I just, you know what, I forgot or whatever. So fake it till you make it. If you have a problem, find the solution. And when you hear something, be grateful for it, because it's one of those things that once I heard it, instead of feeling dumb and feeling bad, I was like, wow, that's really awesome, because that's one less thing that changes. Now, every camera is different. I told you I'm raving about the Mark IIIs right now because of that. I mean, I'm not saying go out and buy one. I'm saying go rent one and you'll flip out, because it's even today, just using the Mark II, which is just one generation back, I cannot believe how much harder it is for me now. You get lazy quick in this industry. I've decided to give you a tool and you never go back. So definitely look at that as well. This was a question that I said we would address today, so I want to make sure that whoever was out there asking about camera heights and where do you know, I said I would answer it, and we will, but you had a question.
Right now, when you were shooting today, were you adjusting the focal point?
Absolutely, the whole time. In fact, every time Helen got behind the camera, she does it differently than me, and didn't you hear me go, ooh, ooh, ooh. It's just funny, like nobody knows it, but I would go back because I don't move it as much, and she uses a lot of the points that I avoid, and it's just a personal style thing. So I'd get there and go to focus and go to push the trigger, and I'm like, it's out of focus, and I'd have to switch it back. Then I know she was going through the same thing, because she'd get behind the camera and it would be where I like it, and so it's really funny. And again, with the new system, it's just amazing, because the idea is to always have it land on the eye, right? Now that does not work. People always ask, where does it go? And I say, I say the eyes, knowing darn well you can't do that. If you've got a single child standing out in a field, you can't get it to land. You might get it to land here or here, but you can't get it in the eyes. And so what it is plane of focus. You also have to remember that if a child's standing out in a field far away, there is a plane of depth here that we're working with, that anything within this range, especially if you're using a more stop-down aperture, you're going to have the ability to get that focus. Where if they're super close at 2.8, you're in big trouble there. So that's just something that you learn over time and you just have to work at. All right, let's talk about like placement of camera as well as where do we put it, because that was a great question yesterday that I hated to skirt, but I knew it was coming up. Camera height, full length, if it's a full length portrait, you shoot primarily straight on and the camera is actually lower towards the belly button. So I know that sounds really weird, but I want you to start, like, take notes here because I want you to test this. This is one of those, get an adult model and play with these so that you can feel what this is. This, by the way, is old school photography rules. So I will always teach old school photography rules because I have trained some amazing shooters this way, and I have taken some students and made them really strong shooters. Because my theory is once you know the rules, you can break the rules. But if you don't know them, you have no idea why something is or is not working. So 3/4 poses, typically when you're doing a 3/4 pose, the camera is straight from the chest. So in other words, my camera height would be right about here on the subject. A headshot, the camera is actually aimed closer to the neck, so it's right straight out there. And then a close-up, a camera goes above the eye, because we kind of showed you that today when I was shooting the older siblings, where straight on looked very flat. Actually, not so much flat, more three-dimensional, but awkward bodies. So when I went up and you saw them look up, what it did is it compressed their faces and they became a flat plane. So instead of being 3 different dimensional bodies, they became one unit, which was really nice. So close up, we typically go up above. So like a business headshot, especially with women, we don't like this extra stuff that we got going here. So just a slight above their head is going to give them that angular shape, and it's going to take weight off the neck. It's going to take weight off the shoulders as well. So this is old school rule. You should know it, and then you can break it all you want, but you definitely should know it. Camera position, this was the question yesterday. This is what you get with those results. When you shoot straight onto a subject, the subject is going to appear true to life. So those poses that I gave you are really more, the first two are really more true to life. If you're above the subject is going to appear small or innocent. In my own work at studio with my clients, I tend to shoot above the kids more than anything because I love that big, wide-eyed, little child in big environment feel. And then, of course, low angle, if you go below the subject and you shoot up, the subject will appear stronger and dominant. This is very common for high school senior boys standing by a car, that really tough guy standing on a train track kind of a thing. We do a lot of that. Keep in mind you're shooting up their nose, so you've got to find that proper height, but it gives a very strong, and we do this with little boys too, little guy next to a Harley or something, we're going to give him that tough guy look. But for the most part, I would say I shoot above the subject more than anything because I like that look. Now, there are 2 types of focus in this industry. There is technically in focus and there is emotionally in focus. That's my excuse. And we use this a lot in the sales room, but there's a problem here. And I know Helen and I mean, we've battled this one out for years because, you're shooting these adorable kids and you get this one shot that is so cute, but they're slightly out of focus, but it is the best shot. Well, guess what? If you show that, mom and dad are gonna see it too. It's gonna be their best shot and they're gonna want that. So now they turn to you and say, okay, I'd like a 30 by 40. You've kind of hosed yourself there. You can't pull a 30 by 40 out of there without doing some major sharpening and some retouching and some eye work. And no matter what you do with an out of focus picture, it's out of focus. It's not crisp, it's not clear, it's not a soft Gaussian look. It's out of focus and you lose something there. So you have to remember, if you're going to show it, if it's your best shot and it's out of focus, that's the best shot. They're going to want it. So don't show it, honestly. Now, there are occasions, the reason I cracked that joke about emotionally in focus is there are times where siblings are wrestling or they're tickling each other and there's a hand that went out of focus and there's something that's slightly off. The eyes are crisp, but the arm is gone or something like that. And we will select those images and we will show those images, but we also are very clear with our clients that, when they come in, we'll say when we finish the slideshow, we'll tell them, you know, a couple images we want to note here. We joke, we say, you know, there are two types of images, technically in focus and emotionally. There are a few images in here that we call emotionally in focus. The kids were having so much fun and they were laughing and joking, and I'm going to point them out to you because they might be slightly soft, maybe a hand movement or something like that. They're still great images, but they would work best for a folio or an album or a component of an art piece, but I would not recommend them for a wall portrait. And I'll show you the ones that'll work really well for a wall portrait. We always say that before we show them anything, because we want to make sure that they don't immediately connect to that amazing shot, and then we have to explain, sorry, that one's out of focus. We had a situation the other day where a client, it was a $6,500 order. It was the day before I left, and Tiffany, the sales associate, came in and she was literally praying that this shot was in focus because this was the biggest shot of the image. And thank heavens, because they were looking at JPEGs in ProSelect, it looked soft, but it was. But honestly, when you're sitting on a $6,500 order and we're literally all standing around the screen and it's rendering what felt like 100 years to pop up, we're like, come on, come on, come on. And we were all like, yes! So in that case, it was just the JPEG, or just that it was in a JPEG, but in reality, if it was soft, I mean, to walk into a client and say, we can't make that as a 50-inch portrait is just horrible.